I keep saying that they're not like us. They do not like us. They're a dark negative energy force. Haven't been around them. They're a very low vibration, dark negative energy that feeds off of dark negative energy. And they feed off of fear, trauma. They feed off of division, anything that keeps us at their vibration. What their fear is the strength of the human spirit. It's such a high vibration, they can't reach it. So they use mind control to dumb us down where they can manipulate us. So this energy force, whatever we want to call it, we can call it demons, we can call it aliens, we can call it whatever we want. The fact is, it's not like us, they don't like us, and it's just a low negative vibration. When we remember who we are and why we're here and gather the strength of the human spirit, it's game over. We've got the victory. It's too high of a vibration for them to even reach. They can't whisper in our ears and manipulate our minds anymore. When we're on to their tactics, when we're on to what mind control entails, why they're doing it, and realize that darkness can't creep in on light. Light exposes what's going on in the dark. And that's what's happening right now. We're exposing what's happening, what this darkness is. And, as people wake up, my daughter Kelly was saying the other day, yeah, it's the Great Awakening is real, but people sure got a long way to go to catch up. And it's so true, because once we wake up and take back our own power, we have got to evolve with knowledge to make sure it never happens again, and realize that we share this planet with dark negative energy forces. And for this small handful to control so many, they use several different mechanisms, especially blackmail. These blackmail videos that we're finally hearing about have been going on my whole life. I was used in them back in before 1960. I was born in 1957. My father was using me in child pornography early on, and these were being made at my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge to, as people comply with that so they can be part of the secret society. That's one way they do it. And then there's others that are covertly filmed and don't realize they're being filmed in that perversion. Others are drugged. Some are coerced. Some are bought off. Some have their families' lives threatened. There's many reasons why people have cooperated, but they've been cooperating now for generations. Add to that the fact that the global education in the school system was patterned after Hitler's youth, and it was designed to teach children what to think rather than how to think. So they had to tell me that so that I would believe that. And the best lies are rooted in truth. The best programming is rooted in truth. So we can't throw the truth out that it might be rooted in just because of the illusions that were created. Like George Bush masquerading as a lizard and why did they have to use holographs? Why did he have to tell me? Why did they have to set all this up? Why didn't it just happen? It should have just happened, but it didn't, because I had to manipulate the mind for the mind control program. The reason for the programming is to make a person feel totally helpless, like everything's beyond their realm to affect. So that's where the lie comes in. The lie is that it's not beyond our realm to affect. The reality is we can affect it, and where else is the reality? What else is the truth? Transdimensional beings, what George Bush said, that aliens are us in the future, that it's all a matter of time travel. We got so many questions that demand answers, so many things to be looking into that I think are just absolutely phenomenal. Instead of thinking aliens have to be evil, what if they're angels of old? What if, we've got so many questions that we need to be answering that is beyond the manipulation of creating an illusion of fear and trauma, and that criminal activity is beyond our realm to affect. It is within our realm to affect. when we remember who we are, why we're here, gather the strength of spirit, and stand up against it, because it has no business. Otherwise, it only has as much power as we give it or let it steal. Politics cannot save us, and every one of us needs to think free. I am grateful that the Great Awakening started with with President Trump in that regard. But I'll tell you what, I sure am not counting on politics to fix this problem, and I certainly question many things that are said. And I'm not going to go eat a McDonald's hamburger because he promotes it. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
need to all think free, no matter what magnificent thing someone's done. We still need to question every bit of information, every bit of what's going on, because there's so much that we're going to have to reevaluate and and process. But we also need to understand that if someone's not complying, they are taken out one way or another so that it can be replaced with someone who will comply. And, I'll just toss one little thought out there. Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA, that horrible trauma, that what happened to the youth who were opening their minds to think free when that trauma occurred, and the fact that Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino's co-writer of Mind War, the ultimate psychological warfare book, General Valey, was on the board of directors of Turning Point. So, where we see goodness, even then we need to question behind and watch for infiltration. We got to start seeing, why is this person on a board of directors when they work the highest levels of psychological warfare? I mean, these are things we need to start evaluating rather than just blindly following what we think is a great thing.
Exactly.
Beyond the Forbidden.
Welcome to Beyond Forbidden. Today on the show, I got one of my all-time favorites when it comes to whistleblowing and speaking the truth. You may know her from her book, Transformation of America, written in the 90s. I believe it was 90s. She'll tell me exactly when. But Cathy, welcome back for the second time. How you been?
Oh, it's good being back. Thank you for having me on. It's exciting seeing truth finally coming to light. I've been speaking out for over 35 years on MK Ultra mind control and healing from it. And like, wow, finally people are starting to see what in the world's been going on all these years.
So this book, what was it? Was it 90, mid 90s?
95.
95.
1995, it was my testimony for Congress. Every bit of it's validated, every word, by clean members of law enforcement and intelligence. There's so much overwhelming evidence, especially through Secret Service and everything. There's so much overwhelming evidence that national security was invoked on it. Also, it names names like the Bushes and the Clintons, and Bill Clinton was president at the time. So, of course, national security was invoked on it. As quickly as national security was invoked on my testimony, very concerned members of Congress encouraged us to get it in book form fast, and they would distribute it to all members of Congress. So both Democrats and Republicans made sure all members of Congress, the intelligence communities, the White House, everybody had copies of it, because once the information's out, once the truth is solidified like that, and national security invoked on it, then there's no sense in silencing us, because that only would have validated the information further. So we survived the impossible. It still wasn't easy. We walked a fine legal line to be able to speak out. But there are a lot of people in government, a lot of people in intelligence that were deeply concerned for the drug and human trafficking, the child sex trafficking, MK Ultra mind control, that are all funding mechanism and components of this globalist agenda that's we're seeing unfold today. It's not unfolding like they planned, because people are awake and aware and reclaiming their freedom, but it's been a heck of a journey all these years.
So I told you, like last time, we didn't really dive into your book that much because I guess let me back up. Because for me, I've read the book many times.
Yeah.
It's been out since 95. But then like I told you, I get a lot of these either late bloomers that just now waking up, that could be in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whoever. And then also I have a lot of like early 20s, mid 20s, even some 18, 19-year olds or teenagers
Yeah.
that are coming across this book, and they're asking me because some of them did watch that last interview we did a couple years ago, and they're like, can we tackle more into the book? So I started thinking, what is it, Cathy? Like after all these years, people are still coming across your book, and how does that make you feel to know that you're getting people talk about your book all the time, either on podcasts, that podcasts you're not even part of? Just I've talked about your book on other podcasts. People pull quotes from it. You have younger people, like I just said, like that want us to dive in a little bit to more of the book because we didn't really last time. We talked more about current events. How does that make you feel to know that this book, after all these years, is, I wouldn't say still relevant because is getting a new life with mostly the younger generation, and then just people, podcasters talking about it, people on social media still talking about it, pulling quotes from it. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's good that this truth is coming to light, and people. I'm always reminded people that what they're seeing today isn't new. What's new is that they're finally seeing it, and they. When I released Trance in 1995, it was seemingly prophetic because it even said who was going to be placed in the office of president. Of course, now it reads like a history book, so it's a good roadmap to where the roots of corruption are planted. People are realizing that our system has been corrupted, that child sex trafficking in my lifetime, I was trafficked as a child, and in my lifetime, it's become one of the most lucrative businesses in the world. How did that happen? Mind control, mind manipulation, diverting people's attention and focus over here so they don't look at what's right in front of their faces. So it's taken a while for people to wake up, and I'm so glad they are, because that is the greatest fear of these perpetrators. Having been deep in the Washington, D.C. swamp among the high level global perpetrators who use drug and human trafficking to fund their globalist agenda and steal elections, and are using mind control to usher it in so that people don't rise up against uh, their determination to align us with their dumbed down artificial intelligence. Their greatest fear is the strength of the human spirit, because they can't manipulate that. It's our saving grace. It's our ultimate win. When we have our strength of human spirit, we have wisdom, and wisdom outthinks their criminal mind every time. But it takes free thought. It takes us to think freely and reclaim that conscious awareness in order to reclaim our free will, to reclaim our soul expression. With soul expression comes discernment of truth, compassion for each other, the ability to go within and align with the divine within and gather the strength of the human spirit, the infinite power of love, and take a stand and say no. It gives us so much fullness in our humanity that these perpetrators, who they are not like us and they do not like us, and they have been manipulating our minds to keep us from thinking, to go within, gather our own power, with a full realization that these perpetrators only have as much power as we give them or let them steal. We've got the victory. We just forgot. So for me, it's like watching this great awakening of people remembering who they are, why they're here, and finally living their life's purpose, rather than being diverted by the latest trauma, the latest tragedy, the latest perversion, diversion, because we need people awake and aware of what's been going on for so long, because the children can't wait for this corrupted system to clean up. They need us to wise up and take action.
Well said. And out of all the horrible and horrific things, that you experienced and you write about and expose in your book, Entrance, that happened to you and your daughter, by high level satanic politicians, business executives, list goes on. First, why hasn't anything ever happened to these individuals by bringing them to justice? And secondly, and I don't mean this in a bad way, Cathy, but why haven't you ever been taken out or Epsteined? Because many people in this field, they have been taken out. Is it because it's almost like you have like I guess a dead man switch or something like that for that book, or what?
It's like funny you should ask that, because I released a podcast today on why I am alive, because people often ask me, like, how did you survive, especially exposing the Clintons and everything? And it kind of details it. My book, Access Denied for Reasons of National Security, spells it out quite clearly, because there's a lot of people now that are experiencing a corrupted justice system, corrupted child protective services, and they're wanting to know how to navigate it. And it's like a roadmap on how to survive to do that. And then I've got a book I just released called Align with the Divine. And it's about using that wisdom that we all have within us, and the heightened senses and the intuitions, to be able to navigate safely through these days that we're living. And it's the answer on how we've survived has been, multifaceted. And the fact is, there's so many good people that are determined to get this information out. So I feel real fortunate to have extreme support, and I feel like I'm divinely protected. Whatever reason I'm still here, I'm going to keep speaking out, because this has been going on, like I said, my whole life. Everyone can research for themselves when MK Ultra came into being. It's when we imported the Nazi and fascist scientists into the U.S. in the wake of World War II. With them came the formula for mind control. And all this is public knowledge. It can be well researched, and people can understand how mind control came to be. The formula for mind control is the same, whether it's of an individual, a nation, a classroom, a military, or the world. Trauma is the basis of it. And they found there's no trauma more horrific on the human mind than sexual abuse of a child prior to age 5 while the brain is still forming. Almost equally as traumatic as satanic ritual abuse. So both of those have been sanctioned for a long time. In 1960, my father, my pedophile father, was caught sending child pornography of me through the U.S. mail. And he was approached by a local politician that I had been trafficked to since a little bitty toddler at my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. He was approached by that politician and told he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would agree to sell me into MK Ultra mind control. We're seeing how our justice system has been corrupted for so-called reasons of national security for generations. So my father, it was never prosecuted. He received lucrative military contracts instead for selling me into the project. I was targeted because I'd been sexually abused from infancy and from a multi-generational abuse family. And they knew that I would have the heightened suggestibility for MK Ultra mind control. That local politician was Gerald Ford. He went on to become the unelected president of the United States. And as his political career escalated, so too did my victimization and MK Ultra mind control. So my experience and the insights that I gained are extensive. I understand how Satanism is used to further traumatize. Trauma shuts down neuron pathways in the brain. The neuron pathways are shut down. We're more highly suggestible and easily led. That's how they are creating a compliant society, one that doesn't stand up against the corruption, one that just keeps taking, the sexualization of our children that's going on in the school system, that are buying into the pedophile agenda. It's because of this kind of conditioning that shuts down people's neuron pathways. We need to get our brains firing again. We have been made perfect. Our brains are amazing, and we can rejuvenate those. We have resiliency of body, mind, and spirit. I'm living proof of that after the traumatic MK Ultra experience I had. But you can open those neuron pathways again and get them firing. And ultimately, that's what everyone needs to do. And I think because so many people are awake and aware today, that and as everyone is reclaiming their free thought, they're wanting to know, okay, what do I do? What can I do? And again, my books read like a roadmap, where the roots of corruption are, where we're freed to move forward, what we can do, how we can heal from within ourselves, and what we can do for the children's sake. So my journey has been extreme, but because it has been so extreme, I've also had extreme friends. The last is 38 years today. Actually, this is the anniversary of when intelligence insider Mark Phillips lifted me out of the Washington, D.C. human trafficking swamp in 1988. It was February 8th, 1988. So it's 38 years today that I've been bringing this information to light. And it's good to see that people are finally getting it.
So to bring in Wayne Cox, was he your first handler?
Well, I suppose my father would have been called my first handler because he did what he was told to do.
Right.
And by the time I was 13 years old, I was taken to the Epstein Island of its time, Mackinac Island, Michigan, where I met who would become my owner in MK Ultra Mind Control, U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd. Senator Byrd was in office for over 50 years. People can research research what he did. I've got a lot of information on how he sold our country out to this globalist agenda. But Senator Byrd, as my owner, appointed my handlers from that point forward. He also appointed my programmer, and he chose Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, the founder of the occult Temple of Set proliferating on military bases, as my primary MK Ultra mind control programmer. So he wanted me to be traumatized further with the satanic ritual abuse aspect. So the first handler he appointed for me was Wayne Cox. And Wayne Cox was in the backwoods swamps in Louisiana. He was an occult serial killer. He was a CIA assassin. He activated mercenaries. And he was working actively with Bill Clinton's Mina cocaine operations alongside of his half brother, Roger Clinton, back in the mid and late 70s. So Wayne Cox was very well connected, but he was also
That's why I
an
bring him up,
extreme
Cathy.
trauma base.
That's why I bring him up. Well, first off, he he doesn't live too far from me. It's about 45 minutes from me or so, or where he lived and where you spent some time
Yeah.
in Chatham. But how does a person like your handler, Wayne Cox, who was a CIA assassin and a cult serial killer, get recruited and go do the dirty work for high ranking political figures? How does that process work, Cathy? Because he was, like I said, from Chatham, which is about 45 minutes away from me. And when I say like there's nothing there, it's a small town, and the population
It
now,
is.
the population now is 500 people. There's no telling what it was back then. And I'm sure it was even a way smaller back then. So how do these high ranking satanic individuals within the government recruit someone to carry out their task from such a small backwoods location? How does that process work?
Well, he was multi-generational satanic family. So the trauma was already there. His ability to follow orders was already in place. And so he was used accordingly. He was also a musician in the country music industry. And it was Senator Byrd, who was a fiddler, who always worked the Grand Ole Opry and was around Nashville. And Wayne Cox was a musician that backed him up.
That makes
So,
sense. That's where it
mhm,
happened right there. Yep.
yes. And
Because
he
I
recognized,
did a lot of digging into him, not just in your book, but
yeah,
yes, even try to pull up old archives from Chatham on the internet. Yes, he was a musician and a lot of history behind, and they almost glorify him down there in
sure.
a way. That's crazy.
Sure, because the truth has been covered up for reasons of national security, so he could get away with anything. And even by the time I was turning in evidence, by the time Transformation of America came out and the evidence was in against him, he still remained free for reasons of national security. The same reason the Clintons are still running free today for reasons of national
When did he
security.
die? When did I pulled up his gravestone, but I forgot what year he died.
It was several years ago,
Okay.
and it's I'm the vibration of the planet raised, I think, when he passed. So I'm glad he's gone. But he was allowed to live a full life and to continue abusing children and 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 everything else that he was involved in, because he was heavily involved in the satanic aspect of what was a precursor for adrenochrome. And that was very much part of Hillary Clinton's human trafficking operations. It was human trafficking, human harvesting from all the way back then. So he was so heavily entrenched that, in spite of all the evidence, he remained free for reasons of national security. I thought when what was the Clinton Chronicles came out. Remember the long? You may have researched into that a little bit. It was
Mm-hmm.
about the kids that were killed on the railroad track.
Oh yeah.
They had stumbled upon the Mina cocaine operation and Roger Clinton and Wayne Cox were working, and that was their MO, and that was their murder, and the evidence was in on that, and he still remained free. So we've got some horrific, horrible um, crimes against humanity that have been and continue to be allowed to proliferate for so-called reasons of national security. We're doing our best now at this point to get the justice system cleaned up. We've got all the evidence in, but we don't have a justice system to prosecute these people through. When all they need to do is invoke national security. When the corruption goes all the way through the Supreme Court, we got a big problem. And I think I'm highly hopeful that the Epstein files are going to continue to unravel the tapestry of this mess so that we can see exactly who is involved and maybe be able to restore some semblance of constitutional value to our justice system.
I think one big problem, and we'll get back into what we're talking about more mind control and some stuff within your book, but it all connects. But one problem with how everything's going, like with trying to get information out, just like you were saying, trying to expose this, I think a lot because the head of the Hydra is it's just it's everywhere. And when it boils down to it, I think Mark Passio calls it the order followers. And order followers are actually the ones keeping slavery in the matrix control system, not the people in charge. Even if someone in authority tells them to do something wrong, they'll just do it anyways because they're just following orders. I was just following orders, Cathy. If you do not carry out your orders, you will be without a job, and you won't be able to provide for your family. So the real reason is who is truly responsible for all the evil and chaos, tyranny, and corruption? Is it just the government? After all, Nazi Germany, the population of Nazi Germany were just following orders, right? People within the government. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I believe, yes, we're not carrying out the evil that they are, but we need to look in the mirror and realize that we're just as guilty in a way, in a smaller way. But I think that is, I know when I heard Mark Passio talk about the order followers years ago, it always stuck with me because it makes so much sense. Cops follow orders. I was in the military. I follow orders. Teachers have to follow. Teachers have to follow orders. The list goes on, and that's where just corruption and it just decays and rots over time. And then when you talk about big, the political arena, deep deep government politics, government institutions, government non-government organizations, they all follow orders, because if they go outside those orders, they're not going to provide for their family. And then when you get that high level, they're making millions, man, or billions. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
it's multi-layered, the reason that people do that, and they're finally waking up to it after generations of conditioning to follow orders. We've been conditioned to look outside ourselves, to big government, big pharma, big tech, big cult to cult religion to tell us how to live our lives instead of going within. So it's time that people are waking up. Everyone got a taste of mind control 2020, when mind control masked as a virus was unleashed on the global population. Look how many people complied with the so-called mandates because they didn't want to lose their job.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good example. Now people are paying the price. They're seeing the results of what happened from masking up their children and inhibiting oxygen to their brains necessary for critical analysis free thought. They're seeing the identity disorder that happened by being masked and terrified into wearing it, or grandma would die, so they're seeing the results of what happened to the children. They're seeing what happened with the results of taking that injection. They're seeing, and they're really, why did I do that? Well, it's mind control. The most basic form of mind control is repetition. How many times did controlled media tell us? Mask up, social distance, get the injection. It was everywhere. It was in the grocery stores. It was everywhere we went. So it programmed the subconscious. The subconscious drives our thoughts and ultimately our actions, and people complied. Now we have the knowledge that's our defense against mind control. And with it, we evolve with that knowledge to not comply going forward. Let's take this to the next level. These perpetrators don't trust each other either. There's only a handful of puppet masters at the top. Follow the money, we'll find who they are. They're self-appointed, self-anointed global leaders, and they meet in secret, whether it's at Epstein Island or Bohemian Grove or secret societies, or they chug in their yachts and fly in their jets over to Davos and meet that way. They're always meeting in secret because they're afraid that we're going to catch on to their secrets. Their secret is mind control, and knowledge is our defense against it. For this small handful to control so many, they use several different mechanisms, especially blackmail. These blackmail videos that we're finally hearing about have been going on my whole life. I was used in them back in before 1960. I was born in 1957. My father was using me in child pornography early on, and these were being made at my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge to as people comply with that so they can be part of the secret society. That's one way they do it, and then there's others that are covertly filmed and don't realize they're being filmed in that perversion. Others are drugged. Some are coerced. Some are bought off. Some have their families' lives threatened. There's many reasons why people have cooperated, but they've been cooperating now for generations. Add to that the fact that the global education in the school system was patterned after Hitler's youth, and it was designed to teach children what to think rather than how to think. So now our children are being indoctrinated by teachers who were indoctrinated to indoctrinate. So we got generations of this happening, and that's as intended. So we've got a great awakening that needs to just go through the generations and break the genetic manipulation that's been going on. Even doctors gave up their compassion for their patients, and instead of listening to their patients and helping them heal, They started marching to the orders of big pharma because that's what they were conditioned and indoctrinated to do in the school system, or listen to insurance companies and follow, and go with the money. So the whole our medical practice is just totally corrupted by the same system. Our child protective services, the Senator Byrd had an office in the FBI building in Washington, D.C., at the Hoover Building, and he opened it to set up the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children as a catch net operation for trafficked children. And it was in the FBI building for a reason, because if you have one corrupt FBI director, all the FBI agents march to that director's orders, and the FBI has authority over all local law enforcement. They can go in on any case, invoke national security, and take it over. So one corrupt agent at the top, and everybody's marching to those orders and doing as they're told because of the structure of the system. And then the children that were being trafficked, and they're run through the corrupt court system and put into so-called child protective services, which has finally come out for being the human trafficking operation that it is. And it just perpetuates the whole criminal cycle. Blackmail being a very key component. And, at least we're finally
Care. I
seeing
think
that.
Kinder Care was exposed back in the 90s or something like that. Remember Kinder
Yeah.
Care? Yeah, they were exposed for, man, some dark stuff back then.
Yeah.
But you said something a while ago that made me think, of course, like I said, I was military, but the idea of like global reset or mind controlling entire populations works like a lot like psychological conditioning and military basic training.
Right.
It's about shaping the perfect soldier. I can speak on from that experience since I went through Army basic training myself years ago. It starts by breaking down the person completely, physically, mentally, emotionally. You're thrown into this nonstop whirlwind of engineered chaos, full of stress and confusion. Fear is the main tool, mixed with the deliberate disorientation and intense pressure until you've lost your old sense of self, your beliefs, your independence. And once that's stripped away, what's left is basically a blank slate, a
Mhm.
mind that's open and ready to absorb whatever comes next. That's when they start building a new set of ideas, one that's all about total loyalty, blind obedience, and becoming a part of the collective like a hive of bees. Eventually, you stop thinking for yourself and just become part of the group, like a cog in a massive machine. And Cathy, if the military has nailed this kind of conditioning for recruits decade after decade, who's to say the government hasn't refined and mind controlled conditioning process over the years to create the ultimate compliant citizen that is mind controlled and conditioned in the United States to be in this constant state of Stockholm syndrome?
Exactly. It's exactly how it works and what's going on. And that's why someone like Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, I mean, he's had a far reach into so many different aspects of our society. He was on the Marin County board of directors on the daycare, that covered up the Presidio daycare scandal that he was involved in. So, he was infiltrating into the churches. The far-reaching effects of that military lieutenant colonel was very deliberate and for a reason, because of that military training aspect. Add to that video games, because they came from the military training to get that conditioned soldiers to point and shoot without stopping to think that that's a person, or have anything slowing them down, and being able to point, shoot, get it, get it done. So video games were created. So then when they take it to the battlefield, it's the same kind of, without thinking of what's actually happening. Then that came into society big time. Kids are playing video games today that have no consequences for actions, and it's training them to be able to be to do anything they want and get away with it. It's conditioning them to think that we have no consequences. When you look at the corruption in our justice system, where there's um, no accountability for crimes against humanity, even we have created generations of a compliant attitude that thinks that there's nothing to stop them from doing it. They losing their moral compass, so to speak, over this. And it's deliberate mind control. And it's coming at us from so many different directions that we've got to step back and, reevaluate everything that we think we know, because our knowledge base has been deliberately altered a long, long time to manipulate us into that militaristic compliance to do exactly as we're told.
And we also have to stop blaming the younger generations also. And I've mentioned this before on many other podcasts, but you hear it. I do it. It's just, I guess it's just a natural thing. We're human. The younger kids these days, blah, 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 blah. We hear it, or we all say it, or we have said it before. But if you think about it, yes, it seems like things are getting worse with the kids these days. But if you think
Mhm.
about it,
Mhm.
each current generation is the byproduct of the previous generation's flaws. We have to do
Exactly.
better at bringing these kids up what's right and wrong, you know, giving them knowledge of corruption, of how things work in reality, the government. Like, it's our duty to bring them out, to bring them, raise them in this society to be prepared for things to come down the road. And it's
Exactly.
the easy way out to say these kids these days. We have to remember each current generation is the byproduct of the previous generation's flaws.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's what was deliberately planned. That's why this is a slow agenda. It's deliberately structured because it was found in Hitler Himmler research that any abuse based, knowledge based, or belief system is passed down autogenically after 3 generations. That means it's born in, it's genetically passed down in the brain. Information is, and that's why I was targeted for MK Ultra mind control, is because of the multi generational abuse base that I had in my family line. So that's part of the Hitler Himmler research. They also determined that if information is suppressed for 3 generations, like our mind brain function was, how our brains work, how our brains respond to trauma, what our defense against mind control is, how we can heal from trauma, all that was repressed under national security. We brought in the formula for mind control with Project Paperclip, 1947. The National Security Act went into place to make sure all of it was kept secret, and the information on our mind brain function buried for generations. So now, in addition to like what you so brilliantly stated, we've also got the multi generational aspect of being dumbed down for generations to the point where we're born dumbed down a bit. So we've got to get our brains firing more, and we can. I mean, I easily overcame it. Soul is stronger than genetics. When we reclaim our free thought, free will, soul expression, we have the capacity to go within and gather the strength of the human spirit and get our brain firing properly the way it was intended to. So we've got that capacity, but that was buried under national security.
And it kind
And
of, I'm sorry, to kind of
no,
go along with what I was saying, I guess.
yeah, exactly.
Like, what I'm saying is, you can't blame your generation, can't blame my generation,
Right, right.
or the new kids, the kids, the young kids growing up today, teenagers, 20s, because where were our fathers, mothers Where were they when in 1913, when the Federal Reserve System was created? Where were they to speak out that to get mind controlled into going into World War II? You know what I mean? That whenever they said our sons and daughters will never go into, and they got suckered into it. Where were they? Where are our fathers and to speak out against the National Security Act of 1947? Where are our fathers for Vietnam to speak out? And no, no, we're not doing that. You know, the list goes on. The list goes on. So our fathers are just everybody. What I'm saying is we're all to blame. Like I said earlier, mm-hmm. You want to look for, I think V for Vendetta had a brilliant quote. If you want to if you want to find the guilty, all you have to do is look into the mirror.
Yeah.
We have to recognize that. And just, I don't know. I guess I go on a little tangent every now and then, and I see how, and I'm guilty. I'm being honest. I have these kids these days, man. Blah, 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 blah. But we're all guilty, and we have to recognize that.
Yeah, rather than blame, we need to empower.
Yes,
and we empower
exactly.
With knowledge.
That, yep.
And we can empower with that knowledge. That's what I've been doing ever since Intelligence Insider Mark Phillips lifted my daughter and me out of the Washington, D.C. human trafficking swamp and handed me keys to my mind. He was working the highest levels of intelligence mind sciences to preserve the sanctity of free thought. He saw what was going on. He was a spook who wore every hat, CIA, FBI, NSA, whatever he needed to be, Secret Service, to be in these key places. And what he saw and witnessed going on was appalling to him because he was working to preserve the sanctity of free thought. He knew the pedophile agenda was a mind control agenda. He knew that the mind control agenda ultimately is a spiritual warfare that dumbs us down to align us with artificial intelligence. And he knew all that was going on, but really ticked him off was finding our birthright information on mind-brain function buried under national security, withheld from the mental health community, withheld from education and the medical community. And instead, we were indoctrinated to look outside ourselves to authority and do what we were told, and it's like he was wanting to get that information out there on the fact that we have within us the victory. We have the ability to break the genetic chain. We have the ability to stop what's been going on all these generations and start reevaluating our values, reprioritizing our priorities, and start protecting our children going forward instead of selling them into this mind control agenda. So how fortunate for us all that Mark Phillips, took the action that he did, and the healing information that he reminded me of is our birthright information. It's not anything new. And by remembering it, we access it. And it's easy to remember because it's right there in us all, waiting to be reactivated, waiting to be reclaimed and utilized. And it's simple to reclaim it because it's natural. So the healing methods Mark taught me are in PTSD Time to Heal. I've got it posted on my website in ebook form so everybody can have it. Everybody needs to reclaim some faction of their free thought, free will, to be able to expand their thinking beyond what they think they know, to be able to understand that trauma, the sexual abuse of a child, is to create compliance. It is not a sexual preference. It is a control mechanism. And we'll remember that when we remember who we are, why we're here, reclaim our free thought so we can choose to reclaim our own power and stop giving it away.
Exactly. And Gandhi, rather, I know some people have mixed emotions about Gandhi. Was he actually controlled? But anyways, a quote from Gandhi: "You assist an evil system most effectively by obeying its orders and decrees. An evil system never deserves such allegiance. Allegiance to it means partaking of the evil. A good person will resist an evil system with his or her whole soul.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Yeah. And so often, if anyone resists and stands up against this dark agenda, their media voice can do an absolute character assassination on them. If someone's not complying, or there'll be an assassination like the Kennedy assassination. He wasn't complying with this agenda, so they've got him out of the way, and that's when these perpetrators took a strong hold of our nation. It's when, at that time, um, the term conspiracy theory came into play through Jack Valenti, head of the Motion Picture Association of America, who happened to be Gerald Ford's press secretary, came up with a conspiracy theory for anyone who was questioning the repetitive media narrative. And we had so many things happen during that time. It was in the wake of the Kennedy assassination that we got the electronic voting machines that were rigged since their inception to place these perpetrators that will comply into key positions of power and influence. So we've got to wise up and realize that that we've lost some people who have stood up. We see the character assassination of President Trump, who I'm not promoting politics. Politics is not going to fix this problem. Only we can fix our problem. But we've got a president that we elected by overriding the rigged electronic algorithm by sheer numbers of us to elect a president that wasn't Hillary Clinton and her New World Order. And it was then we started seeing, oh, there's a swamp in Washington, D.C. Drug and human trafficking are funding this globalist agenda. That child sex trafficking is a reality. That's when our eyes started to open. So we ended up with our eyes opening, and that's when, all hell broke loose in the media to create what is termed Trump derangement syndrome, which ultimately is just mind control. It's mind manipulation so that we don't follow anything that he's saying. I say we need to never follow anything anybody said. Me too. Everybody, I encourage them, research further. You read Transformation of America, don't believe every word. Go ahead, research it for yourself, even though it's been validated, because the more you research, the more you know, the more you see how inexcusable it is that we have allowed this dark agenda to manipulate our brilliant minds and lives. Politics cannot save us, and every one of us needs to think free. I am grateful that the Great Awakening started with President Trump in that regard. But I'll tell you what, I sure am not counting on politics to fix this problem, and I certainly question many things that are said. And I'm not going to go eat a McDonald's hamburger because he promotes it. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
need to all think free, no matter what magnificent thing someone's done. We still need to question every bit of information, every bit of what's going on, because there's so much that we're going to have to reevaluate and process. But we also need to understand that if someone's not complying, they are taken out one way or another so that it can be replaced with someone who will comply. And, I'll just toss one little thought out there. Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA, that horrible trauma, what happened to the youth who were opening their minds to think free when that trauma occurred, and the fact that Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino's co-writer of Mind War, the ultimate psychological warfare book, General Valey, was on the board of directors of Turning Point. So, where we see goodness, even then we need to question behind and watch for infiltration. We got to start seeing, why is this person on a board of directors when they work the highest levels of psychological warfare? I mean, these are things we need to start evaluating rather than just blindly following what we think is a great thing.
Exactly. And with Dr. John Coleman, who wrote the Committee of 300, and Tavistock Institute also.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have the quote in front of me because I didn't know I was going to mention it, but the way you bring up how there's level of corruption in every form of government, no matter who's in charge.
Yeah.
Um, so Dr. John Coleman, I think I read, yes, I read, and then I also saw a video of him talking about it also through a lecture, early 90s, like 1990, 91. Um, he stated that every United States Secretary of State,
Yes.
the past 100 years, our current Secretary of State is Marco Rubio. Every Secretary of State the past 100 years, and he was saying this in 1990 or something like that. The past 100 years has been, or years at 50 years or 100 years, has been a part of the Tavistock Institute or Chatham House in the UK, which is a think tank group. You know, these think tank groups, they kind of basically write the blueprint and the scripts for the global stage. So I did some digging. I went back to, I don't remember when, probably early 1900s. And I was like, whoa, yes, our part, most, I would say 90% of them were a part of the secretaries of state were part of this think tank group, Chatham House, and later Tavistock. Then I was like, who's our current one? Is Marco Rubio. So I did some digging, and I don't know if he's technically a member, but he's done a couple speaking engagements at Tavistock, at Chatham House.
Wow. Wow.
And around 2012, 14, or something like that. I'm like, man, there you go. It's like they anoint who they want in government. It's like,
They do.
who is the head of the snake? You know what I mean? Is it like the UK, the royal family, the Rothschilds? Like, you know what I mean? Like who? Like
Whoever's following the DARPA generated plan, and it's an artificial intelligence that doesn't belong manipulating our minds and lives. These perpetrators don't think like us, and we don't think like them. But to be able to think further and start researching and looking into it instead of blindly following them like you just so brilliantly did, you
yeah.
know, look into Madeleine Albright, Secretary of State. She is absolutely one of the most horrible human trafficker, child sex trafficker, harvesters that ever been. And she is the groundwork for Epstein Island. Hillary Clinton, she's Hillary Clinton's mentor. Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, running the same slave society agenda through it. My experience in MK Ultra mind control ran right through the State Department and from the State Department. The only person that I knew back in the 80s, the mid 80s, that my abusers and handlers feared was Donald Trump. This was all the way back in the 80s because he was on to what was happening in the State Department and how MK Ultra slaves were being run through it. And he opposed MK Ultra mind control and the child sex trafficking operations back then. They feared him. They couldn't blackmail him, coerce him,
That's my thing, though.
buy him off.
That's my thing. Even though if he means well, he's surrounded by. I'm not saying Marco Rubio is evil. No, I'm not saying
That's
that.
right. You're right. You're
But
exactly right.
still, he's surrounded. I guess he appointed him, but I think somebody told him about Marco Rubio. We need him as your Secretary of
Yeah.
State, and Marco Rubio is speaking at freaking Chatham House, Tavistock Institute, where basically the blueprint for the global, where a lot of these think tanks, sets the stage for years to come for the global agenda.
Yeah. How
And
many
Mark,
others are corrupted like that? Let's everybody do what you're doing. Research it further, look into it. And then we'll realize it really is up to us. We're the ones. We're the ones who have to be the change we need to see.
yes, yep,
It's up to us. And it begins with reclaiming our free thought, remembering who we are and why we're here, and gathering that strength of spirit. We've got the victory. We've got the saving grace because the ultimate plan is to dumb us down, attack our humanity so that we align with artificial intelligence. That's just flat linear thinking, just like their criminal minds, flat linear thinking. Wisdom outthinks it every time. We got the victory. We got the victory, but we have to think beyond what we've been told and conditioned for all these generations and question the authority that we've been blindly following for generations. We got to start questioning it, look into it, research it. The answers are right there in front of us.
So, and how come this doesn't get, what I'm about to tell you, just doesn't get exposed, and people just think it's just a random coincidence. It happens all the time, like Jeffrey Epstein, if he is dead. Epstein, people coin the term Epstein. But so DC Madam, early 2000s, her name was Deborah Jean Palfrey. Yeah, Deborah Jean Palfrey. Go my DC Madam. She ran an escort service in DC. And then she had one of her escorts, I believe, I think also friends with her, was Brandy Britton. And Brandy Britton, let me see, she committed suicide in, I think it was January of 2007. Committed suicide, right? How convenient. And then DC Madam, who was the actual, I guess, the owner or whatever of the call girls in there in DC, she hung herself a little more than a year later, 2008. Like, so this is just all random coincidence. They kill themselves. You know what I mean?
Suicided was a term that came up from all the murders that happened around the Clintons back in the early 90s.
Arkansas,
Reporter
yeah.
Danny Casolaro suicided by slitting both of his wrists so far that both hands were. How do you cut both hands off? I mean, it's ridiculous what they call suicide, but the people would rather buy into it because authority told them that, or the media told them that. Now people are using those terms, more like you said, Epstein or suicided or whatever. People know better that many are being silenced, and it goes right back to full circle to the question you asked right away. How have I survived? And it's like it's been a fine legal line, walking a tightrope. It's been a journey, and I think it's one that I hope everyone looks into and sees my new blog post on. Mark Phillips passed in 2017, and I just continue speaking out on my own, using the methods to survive that we did all those years, and I continue to use them because it just requires or the realization that there's always a way to say what needs to be said. Truth always survives a lie. We can get the information out there, but we need to be smart how we do it, and realize that there are many willing to silence us permanently for exposing them. So many MK Ultra survivors have not made it. I lost a very close friend in long ago, and she said she was just beginning to remember who her abusers were on a White House Pentagon level. And she said, "No one would believe the things I can't remember. No one would believe the things I can't remember." What a statement. That's the best she could say before she was permanently silenced. There's so many that get silenced, and we have to be wise and realize we have reached a point now where so many of us are awake and aware and speaking out. They know they can't silence us all. So the best they can do is just keep imposing trauma and mind control tactics until they realize that we've evolved with knowledge that's our defense against it. If they came up with another mind control messed as a virus, they wouldn't get any compliance. People
Yeah.
are onto it. It's not going to happen. So we're in this evolutionary process right now, and truth is its own energy force. It never goes away, always survives a lie. And we're good to stand by truth. With love, we win.
So on my podcast, I cover many genres, alternative genres, conspiracies, and I guess you could say the paranormal are probably the top
Mhm.
two, and then ancient mysteries, where we come from, and all that. But conspiracies and paranormal are definitely the most two talked about. Um, when I look at all this evil, and to be honest, I think there's a connection between a lot of these dark conspiracies that you talk about in your book, so many other great conspiracy authors talking about the conspiracies within the government, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, the Illuminati, and with the paranormal. Why I say that is I don't know what it is, who, or I just know there's some of these individuals can't be human, man. There
Right.
has to be some type of non-human influence. Call it demonic. Call it. I'm not saying like a physical alien. Maybe I used to think about I don't know years ago that there are physical aliens. Like I don't know, but now I think that it's more like some kind of demonic force that's been here for a long time, and they're trying to keep us from our truest and highest potential. And I think some of these dark forces are non-human in origin. Maybe not physical, maybe it's just beyond our visible light spectrum. But I think that they are influencing and guiding these world leaders, these think tanks, these influential people like Musk and others, whoever, to whether they know it or not. It's not like whoever knows that, oh, I have a non-human force, some kind of dark force, demonic force talking to me. Okay, yes, I would do that. But there's something, it's almost like a mind parasite within these individuals. I don't know what it is, but all these satanic individuals that you write about, yes, it came from them, but I feel like some of them had a helping hand from the dark side. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And I keep saying that they're not like us. They do not like us. They're a dark negative energy force. Haven't been around them. They're a very low vibration, dark negative energy that feeds off of dark negative energy, and they feed off of fear, trauma. They feed off of division, anything that keeps us at their vibration. What their fear is the strength of the human spirit. It's such a high vibration they can't reach it. So they use mind control to dumb us down where they can manipulate us. So this energy force, whatever we want to call it, we can call it demons, we can call it aliens, we can call it whatever we want. The fact is, it's not like us, they don't like us, and it's just a low negative vibration. When we remember who we are and why we're here and gather the strength of the human spirit, it's game over. We've got the victory. It's too high of a vibration for them to even reach. They can't whisper in our ears and manipulate our minds anymore. When we're on to their their tactics, when we're on to what mind control entails, why they're doing it, and realize that darkness can't creep in on light. Light exposes what's going on in the dark. And that's what's happening right now. We're exposing what's happening, what this darkness is. And as people wake up, my daughter Kelly was saying the other day, yeah, it's the great awakening is real, but people sure got a long way to go to catch up. And it's so true, because once we wake up and take back our own power, we have got to evolve with knowledge to make sure it never happens again, and realize that we share this planet with dark negative energy forces. And then that is, there's more to our reality than what we think we know. We're only using 10% of our brains. We have so much more capacity. We have an ability to see more than what we're looking at, because our focus has been directed this slow linear way. We have got so much more vastness to embrace. That's why I just released Align with the Divine. It opens the neuron pathways in the brain to utilize these other capacities that we have, so that we maintain our victory once we reclaim it, because I think this planet's always been that way, and it's up to us to make sure that it has no place in our lives anymore. They have no business meddling in our brilliant minds and lives. It's our choice. We have all the power.
Exactly. And you talk about a lot of this negative influence from these dark forces within your book also. But do you think some of the alien talk, it gets a bad connotation because people think alien, they think of a little green man or gray, whatever, black almost shaped eyes. I think it's much more complex than that. Um, but do you think that was part of your programming? To think that, or because I have a quote right here. It's from page 176. NASA lab programming with Bennett. Quote, in the darkness surrounding me, I could hear Bill Bennett talking. This is my brother Bob. He and I work as one unit. We are alien to this dimension, two beings from another plane. The high-tech light display swirling around me convinced me I was transforming dimensions with them. A laser of light hit the black wall in front of me, which seemed to explode into a panoramic view of the White House cocktail party, as though I had transformed dimensions and stood amongst them. Not recognizing anyone, I frantically asked, who are these people? They're not people, and this is a spaceship, Bennett said. As he spoke, the holographic scene changed ever so slightly until the people appeared to be lizard-like aliens. Welcome to the second level of the underground. This level is a mirror reflection of the first, an alien dimension. We're from a transdimensional plane that spans and encompasses all dimensions, infinite dimensions, Bob injected. Infinite dimensions span simultaneously, Bill said. No limitations. Bob softly sang, let freedom ring. There truly is nowhere to run and nowhere to hide from us. We're here. We're who is looking from behind the eye in the sky, Bill continued. We're watching you, Bob said. He sang a line from the popular rock song, I'll Be Watching You. I have taken you through my dimension as a means of establishing stronger holds on your mind than Earth's plane permits, Bill Bennett was saying. Being alien, I simply make my thoughts your thoughts by projecting them into your mind. My thoughts are your thoughts, end quote. Now, do you think that was some of your programming to with some of that? And if it was, I think some of it is true though. Like we are, I don't know about, see, people think alien, they think like a gray with black almost. No. I think what is definitely true, some of it could have been programming, but what is true, what you were told is they're from a transdimensional plane. That's these dark forces. You know what I mean? And
Yes, exactly.
These people are possessed by something. And that's the reason why I touch on a lot of conspiracies and paranormal. That's what my show focuses on, is because they kind of interconnect in a way. We had this dark force that has been plaguing humanity for thousands of years. This evil agenda isn't a new agenda. It's just got a new face behind a different mask in this current day and age.
Yeah, it's definite programming, because why would they have to tell me that instead of just let it be? So they had to tell me that so that I would believe that. And the best lies are rooted in truth. The best programming is rooted in truth. So we can't throw the truth out that it might be rooted in just because of the illusions that were created. Like George Bush, masquerading as a lizard and why did they have to use holographs? Why did he have to tell me? Why did they have to set all this up? Why didn't it just happen? It should have just happened, but it didn't, because I had to manipulate the mind for the mind control program. The reason for the programming is to make a person feel totally helpless, like everything's beyond their realm to affect. So that's where the lie comes in. The lie is that it's not beyond our realm to affect. The reality is we can affect it, and where else is the reality? What else is the truth? Transdimensional beings, what George Bush said, that aliens are us in the future, that it's all a matter of time travel. We got so many questions that demand answers, so many things to be looking into that I think are just absolutely phenomenal. Um, Instead of thinking aliens have to be evil, what if they're angels of old? What if, we've got so many questions that we need to be answering that is beyond the manipulation of creating an illusion of fear and trauma, and that criminal activity is beyond our realm to affect. It is within our realm to affect when we remember who we are, why we're here, gather the strength of spirit, and stand up against it, because it has no business. Otherwise, it only has as much power as we give it or let it steal. It's up to us to gather our own power and start living our life's purpose. And when we do, like my daughter Kelly said, they got a long way to catch up. We got so much to explore. We not only have to clean up the system and restructure it and effectively protect children going forward, but we've got so much vastness to explore. Align with the Divine opens the mind to a lot more possibilities. And I think it's a book you're really going to enjoy. It's very small. It's just a bunch of short stories that illustrate the capacities that we have let lay dormant for so long. And when we embrace those, we're going to be able to embrace a lot of the truth and reality of what in the world is going on. Um, it's phenomenal. I'm excited for where we go from here through this great awakening curve and the truth that we're able to uncover.
And that's why I think the dark forces in physical form and also in the spiritual realms, uh, the beyond our frequencies, they want to keep us from our truest and highest potential.
Mm-hmm.
Love, family,
Yeah. Yeah.
life, everything that makes us human, that makes us tick. They're afraid of that. They're
Yep.
afraid of that spark, that essence, that that life-giving spirit that we have as a species. You know what I mean? And they want to do everything to drain us like a battery, like it's like in the Matrix, because they feed on that negativity, they feed on that energy, and we buy into it. That's part of that conditioning and mind control process. But I guess the final thoughts, where do we go from here? This where we end. Like, how does the future look in your opinion? Are we going to win this war over the dark forces in the physical and the non-physical realms? I guess the floor is yours. Where do you want to take it, Cathy?
We've already won. We've already got the victory. The vast majority has already passed critical mass. We just don't realize it. The media is not going to tell us. It's up to us individually. It's going to take like a spiritual evolution, a mental evolution, an evolution that's our defense against mind control going forward, and realizing again who we are and why we're here. People are remembering it, they're gathering it. I'm excited where we go from here. I'm busy as it gets because people are getting out in their communities, talking to each other, eye to eye, heart to heart, soul to soul, to make a difference right in their own backyards instead of waiting on government to do it for them. um, I encourage people check my website, trance-formation.com. Look at all the events that are that I'm involved in. Come and see the live presentations, because it's not just me talking, it's communities coming together to make the difference. So we've got the action happening. We need to join that majority and realize that we've already got this victory. It's a matter of us uh, claiming it. I encourage people to read my books, listen to them on Audible, whatever. I read them all myself to preserve the integrity of information and start expanding their thinking. It's happening. I'm speaking globally, and deeply encouraged at what people are doing outside of government that the media is not covering.
And you can't be discouraged, because I know things can be it just seems like things are going to hell in a handbasket. And sometimes some of the deep dark rabbit holes that I cover, the topics I cover on the show, can be seem very pessimistic. But like you said, we're winning. But the reason why, on the flip side, it seems like things are so chaotic and everything is because I've often said on the show, this is our trial by fire. This is our trial by fire moment in history. How do we handle it is where we go, where we take our kids, how their future will be. And if we handle it good, things will be good. But this is our test. I think we're doing good with that test. but we have to continue to make sure that we preserve the future for our kids and grandkids, you know.
Yep, exactly. And again, it's up to each and every one of us. And we can't be expecting someone else to do it for us or to instruct us on how to do it. It's a self-realization and it's an evolutionary process that we're in. It's an exciting time to be alive. It's amazing I have survived so long to reach this point of seeing it unfold. And um, yeah, I deeply appreciate this discussion with you. You're brilliant. I love the way you think. I love the way you open minds. And um, yeah, you're amazing. Thank you for giving me voice today.
Exactly. And thank you very much for what you've done for speaking the truth and getting this information out. And thank you very much for coming back on the show the second time. And we'll love to get you back on down the road eventually because I know you're a busy woman. But thank you very much for coming back on, Cathy.
Thank you so much.